Hello, my name's Deborah Lilly, and I'm joined today by a peer and a great friend, Steve Davis, and we're going to talk today about some of the reasons that people move to cloud. As I said, my name's Deborah Lilly, and I've got 27 years of experience with Oracle applications and technology, and I've worked on hundreds of implementations across a range of industries. I've always been passionate about users having their say in applications, and within Oracle, that model is independent user groups. I led the global user group input into Oracle development during the design of their cloud applications and worked with Oracle to launch them in the community. This led me to be awarded an Oracle ACE Director, which is Oracle's highest recognition for their sharing and knowledge, their advocates program. And that's led me to my role here in InnoApps, where I look after customer success, making sure that our customers get what they wanted from their use of Oracle. InnoApps is an Oracle-only partner. We're global, and we look after all Oracle customers on-premise and cloud, and the moving from on-premise to cloud, where that's the right thing for the customers to do. And we ourselves are cloud applications users. We moved to Fusion in 2016. So I'd like to pass over to Steve to introduce himself.
Hi, I'm Steve Davis. Thank you, Deborah. So I'm Managing Director of Fraden Consulting. I started life as an Oracle user 25 plus years ago, and then found myself into consultancy with various partners from Mocum to PwC to Namos, and then latterly as a contractor, working actually with some of those organisations, contracting back to them, and also version 1, MazTech, etc. So I've spent a lot of time in the SI world, working with customers to actually deliver the Oracle solution, whether it be on-premise or in the cloud, to their needs and their requirements, and making it work for them, which is the important part of what we do. Like Deborah, but not to the same level, I had a lot of input with the UK Oracle user group over a number of years, working on committees and fostering relations between Oracle and the user community and trying to work towards better development. More latterly, last few years, been working on ERP selection and vendor selection programs. So working with customers to work through their business case through to determining the shortlisting for vendors, selection process, RFP, etc., has been a different sort of poacher come gamekeeper, if you would like, in some ways, while still delivering cloud solutions in the Oracle ecosystem as well. And good to be here. Thanks, Deborah.
Oh, no problem at all. So one of the things that I do a lot of in my role is work with organizations that are currently on-premise or using other applications other than Oracle around their road mapping. So very similar to what Steve is doing independently. And I present a lot around the things that they should be considering, which has built up over a number of years based on all of those interactions that I've had with customers. And I thought that this would be a really good topic to look at some of those reasons that we found. So I might say to someone, you know, you should consider, does it work for you? Is it okay for you to host it, etc. But actually, everybody is unique. Everyone is different. But we thought that we would look today at some of the trends that we see, some of the things based on our wide experience that we've heard from different customers. So I'm going to kick that off, and I'm going to say one of the a common reason why people move, and that is we must move, is that they have a burning bridge. So, you know, we might start there with hardware. So I have a customer in the US who purchased additional hardware when they moved their e-business suite to 12.2. The life expectancy of that hardware is 5 years. They're in halfway through that. So they made that decision to upgrade their hardware because they felt that the Oracle Cloud infrastructure or Oracle's hosting wasn't mature enough for them. But they've 2.5 years left on that hardware. And so they're currently planning that they would move to cloud applications when their hardware no longer supports what they're using today. So, Steve?
Yeah, so recently I worked with an organisation that they'd gone HR and payroll onto Oracle Fusion, but was still running their financial procurement on e-business suite and an old version thereof as well. And although they had planned or were in the process of doing the project to move to Oracle Cloud as well, their hardware was starting to fail. And about 4 weeks before go live, it was nearly catastrophic, and they were actually on eBay looking for pieces of kit and various things. So they'd left it really to the very last knockings before they moved. However, yeah, at least they were in the process. They were very quickly going to be on Fusion. It was going to be a thing of the past for them. But it is, as you say, with your one, Deborah, 5 years, it goes quite quickly when you've got to plan and determine a cloud project and a move to cloud. And even now it's 2.5 years, you're starting to push against the boundaries a little bit.
You are, and there are other factors that you might not have planned for. So, for instance, where organizations are hosting their own, if they're using VMware, some of the changes that have happened since that acquisition are causing people to perhaps it not be as obvious as they expect it to be and having to look at other options now. Now, in a quite a cynical way, one of the things about a burning bridge is that that is quite clear in a business case. So we said here that we'd mentioned some of the business case scenarios. So for when it's a hardware, and we'll move on to software now, but that is something quite clear in a business case. We have to move because we're no longer going to be able to stay as we are. And, you know, it's equally a burning bridge for software. So I have a customer at the moment who goes live in their HCM implementation in August. That we talked about timescales there. This one, they did 2 phases. This is the second phase. Their current system, which is SAP, goes end of life at the end of the year. So they absolutely have to be off by the end of the year. Their planning has been very good. They've a good 5-6 months of contingency there. There's no reason why they won't go live in August, but that is something they have to move. Their software will no longer run or be supported at that point.
And again, that becomes a fairly simple business case to put forward, doesn't it?
Yeah.
As far as that is concerned, and the reasons. What it doesn't do, if you don't pick it up quick enough, is give you the options of where you're going to go and those timescales to make those right decisions on what system you're going to go to. Absolutely. So again, it all comes into that timing, because the selection process and the RFP and everything else, plus the implementation, is years, or can be, depending on your organisation. So.
I mean, I think that's a fair point. It's not that you are not made to go from Oracle on-premise to Oracle Cloud, and it is not a push button move, and therefore the right thing for an organization to do is to look at what's available. It doesn't, and that takes time, right? If they're happy that they're going to go to Oracle, that's fine, but if they do the due diligence on other options, then you've got to factor that time in as well. Okay.
Yeah, and I think that's it. And it's being honest with that. Are we just getting the others involved because we want to, push Oracle's pricing down or whatever? Or are we really having an open and honest tender process to see what is going to be best for us now? We've been on this on-premise system for however long, or this old software forever long. Let's go and see what's new in the market. And it might not be Oracle, let's be honest, the best fit for them. But yes, that does take time, but ultimately they should get the rewards out of it.
Absolutely. Another common thing I see is what I call the not yet. So the software isn't end of life yet, and EBS doesn't have an end date. The current supported date is a rolling date, um, but they've not really taken. So people are saying, okay, well, I've got another 10 years, I might go in 7 years, it's going to be complicated for me. I haven't really taken all of the innovation that's been delivered because I thought we were going to be forced off. We're not going to be. So one of the things that we tend to do there is like try and help them unpick what they've done so that when that time comes, because it's going to be difficult, we're making it less difficult. Sitting there and saying we're not going to do it for 5 years doesn't reduce that problem. So again, that's something else that we see quite a lot of.
Yeah, I think that's right. I mean, we've worked with a lot of customers, Deborah, and there's amazing amount of ones that will just upgrade it and over a period of time, but they don't actually bring in a new functionality. It's the old lift and shift process.
Yeah,
And the workarounds that they've had from way back have now become the way of working. Well, actually, the functionality is now there. Just switch it on,
absolutely.
but you haven't. You'll keep your workaround. So
Absolutely.
here's the
It's
time.
amazing what you can find when you start unpicking. Um, Not quite so common, but something I've heard a number of times is we're going to move because we can't get the resources anymore. Like our DBAs are as old as our system, and they're going to retirement. We can't find people to do it. Sometimes the answer there is a managed service provider, but quite often the IT department are running the current system. They've got a shortage of staff. They don't want to go to a managed services scenario. And, at that point, it might be the time that they decide to move to cloud. And especially, I find that the on-premise systems tend to be run by IT, and the cloud systems tend to be bought by the business. So sometimes, there's a bit of not friction, but understanding within an organization, and resources is often the time uh, when people are forced into making a decision. That's their burning bridge, and there's always that, oh, what's going to happen to my job?
Yeah, and I think you get that in some cases when you've got also legacy systems that have been built by somebody who's retiring and nobody else knows how it works as well on those resources. But yeah, you're absolutely right. I mean, when cloud came in, I mean, I thought, well, all the DBAs are going to go and work for Oracle, aren't they? They're not going to be needed anywhere else. But I think their world has changed in how they do things for applications, etc. And you're right, they feel like it's a UIS, owned system. It's not owned by the business; it's owned by IT. And any discussion about whether we're moving, what the strategy is going to be, can prick some egos as
It
well
can.
in some point. And as you say, you don't want to get into that bum fight of ownership and who's able to do what on it and who actually holds the purse strings on it as well.
Um,
Whose budget it comes out of seems to be quite important.
it does, yeah, as part for the business case. And you need to put in that business case about reskilling, because they might not be doing the same jobs, but they will be equally important. And I would say if you talk to DBAs that were managing on-premise 5 years ago who are now managing cloud, yes, they're doing slightly different things, but all of them would say it was worth it. Um,
Yeah,
so
yeah,
it
absolutely.
is a fear of the unknown, but I say don't be worried about it. The last topic area I've got down here around burning bridges is that you've simply outgrown your system. It's not fit for purpose. Um, I could, a very simple example, which I see a lot of, is people who implemented Oracle eBusiness Suite 15, 20 years ago. Quite often, I see that their chart of accounts includes a project segment. where they're running projects through their general ledger and not through projects. And as their organization has grown, that's not scalable for them, and they really do need to embrace projects as a module on its own and have a simplified chart of accounts that just looks after the accounting. So that's another one that I see quite a lot of.
Yeah, I mean, I've got one that's chart of accounts related as well, and I think it's primarily, although they're using projects, but in their case, the 20 plus years on the same system, the segments are being used for multiple things. They've grown wings, they've got thousands of codes, etc., etc., and it really isn't fit for purpose. And then the question would be, well, can we redo all this in our on-premise system? And then trying to unpick what you've already done in your design and everything else. The new chart of accounts means new ledger, means this, means that, as we know in Oracle. And in the end, it was structured that actually we want to move to the cloud, and it's a great opportunity to have a look at our chart of accounts and do it much, much better. The problem you always have with that is that chart of accounts projects can last longer than implementation projects if you don't control them, especially if they're global and you want to get a single chart of accounts agreed by anybody. So again, it has to almost start before you even think about what product you might go to. You can do that alongside, but your chart of accounts needs to be worked on with the business to get that correct. What are my segments? We are using that for that. And like you say, we're using projects for projects. We're not going to use a cost center or whatever it might be, and getting that strict principles and structure in place.
I do see, and one of the things that I talk to a lot of customers about, and we have several that have done this, is that they know they've got that situation, but they're not ready to move their ledgers, etc. And we start modeling and moving to a new chart of accounts in EPM and reworking the statutory reporting from EPM and modeling what that organization would look like. So almost a consolidation of one organization, or it might be multiple organizations, but as their first step for moving towards cloud.
It is a good cloud introduction, as you say, and I think early days, before people went on to ERP cloud, EPM cloud was taken up as that first step. First about understanding cloud, and secondly about doing exactly what you said. And I think the other good thing is you can get some really good data mapping within EPM, because obviously it is used for consolidation to take it from old to what it would look like in the new world. And then obviously when you come to the implementation project, your data migration is a lot easier, because you're able to, you've already got the mapping for this is where it is now and this is where it's going to go in the future state. So it sort of ticks a few boxes.
You understand that you'll be more au fait with that data and that structure, so it does make that easier.
So we the monthly releases and how Oracle manage cloud. There's that secondary bit as well. That experience that you get.
Absolutely. So we talked there a number of different scenarios, mainly with existing eBusiness Suite customers that are moving. And I just thought we'd have a little look at net new customers to Oracle. So one I see is consolidation of an organization that's grown by acquisition. So, by its very nature, that means they've got several applications that they're running today, and as part of that consolidation of the organization, they put in a new system that will manage the size of company that they are now. On the business case side of this, I always think, why is the new system not part of the acquisition business case? When you buy someone, you're going to have to do this. Why isn't it part of that? But often it isn't. And it might be that they've got a couple of systems and you're looking at one of those, but more often than not, I see that they'll go to a net new one, and Oracle may be that net new one that they go to.
Yeah, it's a bit of a mixture, isn't it? Because the one that's doing the acquisition, should they go on theirs, or the people they're buying, they've actually got a better one that might be able to scale better. and then could get into a bun fight. And so actually, just to get something new that everybody moves on to is sometimes a lot better way of doing it and achieving it. Um, it's easily supported and much easier to actually drive through that change. I think rather than trying to, we're adopting theirs, is always a little bit of a difficult one to swallow
Yeah,
for some people.
I have a company that went live just a couple of months ago, and they were two organizations that emerged together. And they had both independently been looking at a new finance system. And both of them liked Oracle. One of them had a slightly more acute need to get going than the other, and they've just gone live, and then the second part starts in September. Um, but that was, they looked at a number of systems. Neither of them had a system that would scale. They'd
Mm,
outgrown their own system, so let alone bringing in more.
yeah,
But they chose Oracle, and yeah, because we always talk. This isn't what this session's about, but we always talk about the change factor of people, adopting that change, and there are some politics there as well if you have
absolutely.
two
Yeah,
organisations coming together.
yeah, yeah, for sure.
Okay. The other one that I see is a removal of the barrier to entry. So, if I explain what I mean by that, Oracle has always been seen as a tier one solution, a big enterprise solution with lots and lots of functionality and very configurable, lots of choices that you can make. But many, many organizations have found the barrier to entry too big. So, you needed a server, you needed DBAs, you needed a lot to get that commissioned in the first place and then to maintain it. And that put smaller organizations who wanted the functionality off. Those costs were unpredictable. Every time you did an upgrade, which wasn't all that often, but when you did do one, you probably had to upgrade that hardware, etc., etc. So cloud has removed that barrier to entry, and it's now a subscription cost, which is much more predictable, and a smaller organization can decide that that's what they want to do. Now, I think that brings its own challenges, that they may then feel that a traditional implementation is too complicated for them, because there are too many choices and they didn't have anything before to say, well, we've always done it this way, which is a phrase I think should be banned from implementations. But they understand that cloud's going to bring them modern best practice, and they just want to go with it. They're not fighting that; they just want to get on with it. And I know that Oracle introduced their HCM now as a campaign for partners, and we're part of this, where we have a simplified methodology for those customers who don't want to go into every option. They want to take that best practice. They want to have a very quick start, quick time to value, start because anything is going to be better than what they had before, and then grow with it as their organization does. So they're actually probably my favorites. They're almost greenfield sites because they've been on much inferior software before, which they had well outgrown, and they want to be the new dynamic company with the new systems.
Yeah, I think they don't come with any baggage, do they? I think
Yeah,
that's one of the great things. And the whole, well, as you say, I used to be able to do it this way, and I'm myself professed expert at this because I read something once on an Oracle website. So it's a lot easier, I think, to go for that adopt, not adapt, and almost pre-built. Here you go. This is what you can work with and do. And when we play that back, when we are implementing and saying, how does this not work for you? It's very rare that anybody in those sort of businesses says, no, that won't for us.
yeah,
Whereas I think people that have been using these type of ERP systems, whether it be Oracle or SAP, etc., others are available,
definitely.
is that is that they try and morph the new system into some of the things their old system did, despite the fact that a lot of them really hated their old system and want to move to a new one, but then they want to design it exactly the same way. So it's getting over those barriers. I think you don't need to as much with the new, say greenfield. They're not carrying the baggage of anything previous, I think, which is
Absolutely.
really beneficial.
Yeah. So I thought next we'd have a little chat about new functionality. So cloud is not just on-premise rewritten in new exciting technology. There is actually new functionality as well. And I thought we're in 2024. I can't have a presentation without talking about AI. So first of all, the technology that Oracle Cloud applications are written in supports Oracle's strategy of embedding AI and Gen AI into the application. That can't happen in the traditional on-premise applications. You can use AI, but in many cases you have to export your data into a data warehouse or into a factory alongside the AI that you need either to build yourself or come from a third party. Oracle have done a lot to put guide rails around AI and embed it into the system. If anyone's interested in that, because that's all I'm going to say about it, but if anyone's interested in that, we did do a webcast about that a few months ago. Reach out and we'll give you the link. But going on to new traditional functionality, in finance, it's not as obvious as, people don't do their accounts in a different way. They still pay invoices. They still, they still send out invoices. But over and over again, I hear, oh, eBusiness Suite was brilliant at collecting data, not so good at giving us that data back. So there were always challenges around reporting. And in my 27-year career, my first ever presentation was on Discoverer. So I go back to even pre-Discoverer. I can tell you what it was called before that. And you will see that there is a lot of third-party solutions to point problems, many of which are resolved when you go to cloud. So the ability to get the data out and data being pushed to you rather than you having to go and find it are improvements on the on-premise. So the data might be similar, but how you get to that data and how you can use it is much better. I think about, there's an S-base embedded in finance so that you can slice and dice your accounts in real time rather than have to build up complicated mappings to do that. So it is much easier in finance to get to that data, although the actual functionality hasn't changed that much.
Yeah, I'd say transactional processing, there's a few more efficiencies that have been brought about by cloud, to be honest. But I think one of the big things was the dashboards, the infotars, infolets. I don't have to run a report, output the report to Excel, find an invoice number, go into the application, type the invoice number and find it. I can just go into the dashboard and it's there, click on the link and I'm in it. And that for day-to-day users has been a godsend to them. And you look at it and go, God, why didn't we always work this way? And of course, it wasn't always available.
Yes.
So there's that, and as you say, and then there's the reporting. It's not all about churning out great big reports. It's about getting the analytics on the things that you need to see based on access controls and various other things that just produce you the data you want to help you move along, whether that's in an analytical way or a transactional processing way. I think that's how finance has benefited because making a payment's making a payment, although links with banks have got a bit better over the years.
Definitely. I had one customer who went really early to cloud and they had just overcomplicated their system. Really overcomplicated, incredibly devolved, lots and lots of rules. made it a maintenance nightmare, and they really bought into the simplicity of getting that data and having the control over it, and were, you know, pretty happy to go first. You know, what about your experience of early adopters?
Yeah, I think the early adopters for finance, particularly because obviously HCM went first, primarily. A lot of people got onto that as a good product and then wanted to do the ERP side of it, and it wasn't as nearly as mature. And actually, if they were on-premise users, they were losing functionality that had been used to having. Forget customizations and all the other weird and wonderful things they'd done to that system. They just didn't have all the things that they currently had. But some of those are still quite leaders in that respect, in the fact of that's okay, but we can also work with Oracle to develop some more of the things that we want to see in it, and utilize that part of it, knowing that that stuff is going to come. We're not just going to be left without it. It will come and it will be better. And
Absolutely.
I think what they didn't realize also, though, is they were not going to get the localizations and those sort of things that they thought that they got in 12 and 11i. And so what's happened is obviously the partners have picked those up. So like Making Tax Digital, Oracle does all the computations, gives you all the information, but won't do the submission to HMRC. Whereas the partners have developed that part of it, because obviously the users and the customers need it.
Yeah.
So it's been good for an Oracle and their partners point of view, I think, development
Yeah.
of cloud and improving it.
Yeah. On HCM, I see lots of new functionality. We actually treat employees differently than we did 25 years ago. There has been lots of transformation in HR as a profession. So, you know, the system has been designed with a lot of that new HR in mind. I know, you know, Oracle acquired Taleo and completely rewrote it for recruitment and learning. And I worked with many a customer that, you know, they needed modern systems and modern ways of working with their employees to attract people to their industry. I remember working with a bank who said, we need to have a wonderful recruitment experience for our candidates, even if we turn them down. Because if we turn them down, we still want them to be a customer of our bank. So it was really important to them that it was always very professional, very easy to use, etc. And that's one of the main reasons that they adopted HCM, was that functionality that they needed for their industry.
I think the good thing about HCM is that obviously you've got your administrators, the people that have to physically do things within the HCM modules, etc. But most of the stuff is geared towards the user, the individual, the employee, and therefore Oracle's invested in that, you know, user experience incredibly. From all the Oracle things I went to, the user group things,
Yeah.
labs and things like that, was all getting feedback on that. Obviously with finance, it's more transactional processing. You're more back in the HR administrator's world of using a system because that's your full day job,
Yeah.
rather than something that you need to help with something else. I think things will come out of it in finance. I think they have done in the procurement side, because again, that is wide reaching to, you know, near enough every employee. Expenses is another one, the mobile addition to all that. So I think the development over there will be quite interesting on how that works. Yeah.
Yeah. I think when we were talking about this a few days ago, you were saying that one of the big values of HCM is it frees up the HR people to do proper HR. You know, getting rid of that transactional side that they had before. I remember
It's the
working with
same with
a
AP, with things like scanning and matching, you know, whereas AP people were, you know, transactional churn, that's now being done by systems, and now they're looking at exceptions and looking at where are we spending our money? Should we be getting contracts with these suppliers to actually, you know, bring the prices down? Look at strategic procurement rather than transactional doing. And I think that's been
absolute,
important.
absolutely. We're currently working with Oracle as an early adopter on virtual credit card payments. And the promise behind that is that you'll be able to pay your supplier earlier because you've got the line of credit with your credit card provider, and by paying them earlier you can get a discount from them. So if you do procurement properly all the way through to the pay side, you can make it work for your organization. So new functionality like that is really quite powerful. And we're working with Oracle because we use Oracle ourselves, so we're working with them as an early adopter on that. Back to HCM, I work with a police organisation, and in their HCM, they're often asked at the last minute for information about their workforce and who's available and who's trained and whatever. And they were able to get that information through a combination of HCM and Service Cloud, and give them immediate access to data that previously had taken them days to pull together, which when it's at short notice just isn't acceptable. So, depending on your industry, there may even be operational things that you can do better in cloud.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Yeah. So, we've talked about the system having a burning bridge. We've talked about some net new customers. We've talked about new functionality. I think a couple of others are consolidations of systems. We are seeing more customers who want to have everything together, less integration, a simplified, it helps with your data if it's all in one system. You're not copying, repeating, having errors. So we see, there's a lot of complexity in that. What phasing do you do that in? How do you do what integrations you need? How do you maintain the data? But they're all things that can be helped by a consolidated system. In our own, you and I are both UK based. If we look at our central government, that's going through that today. Technology agnostic at the moment, but the idea is that they will move into clusters. We have a number of higher education customers in the US where they want to have one system for their finance, for their HCM, but also their student system. And all of the providers are currently building those student systems. And, the feedback I get from them is, well, whichever one comes up with the best student system will be the winner. They're waiting for a consolidated system. But they are.
We know this goes round in cycles, don't we? We've seen this. We've had the best of breed cycle. We then go back to joining it all up again. We then go back to splitting it up because APIs are so much better and all this sort of thing. And now we're seeing it. And I think one of the things you mentioned early on in that bit was staging and the phasing of it.
Yeah.
When you've already got HR and payroll on one system, finance, procurement on another, or even 2 or 3 separate systems, is bringing them together. And usually the people one comes first, and the others follow. But I think one of the things I've learned over especially the last 2 or 3 years, is how customers need to talk even within their HR, payroll, finance, procurement before one of them starts, because there's design decisions when you go onto a single unified system that affect all of you. And you can't just go blinkered and say, right, we're doing HR, payroll, this is the calendar, this is this, this is that, and then go, that's not our calendar at all. That's not.
You know what?
Once you put it in, it's set in stone, and all those sort of things. Talk to each other, keep each other in that loop, because if you're all going to end up on the same.
Yeah, I always demand that HR and finance are in the room for that global design, regardless of what you're implementing. But actually, if an organization wants to go HCM first, which makes sense for a lot of things, my tip is install the minimum number of users for finance and just put in your chart of accounts, because then they're part of the answer, not part of the problem. And I've done that a number of times. Then you can just feed in their balances, they can start reporting on the new system, but they'll have no drill down. And I did that once in a big financial services organization. They weren't going to go finance for 3 years, and they actually brought it forward because they loved being able to see their data in the new system. Lots of ways to skin this cat. We could talk for hours on phasing, but that's some of the things that you have to talk about. And then the last thing is, when we were discussing this, when we were prepping, was like that C-level champion. When I've a customer I'm working with at the moment, a long-term organization, but family owned, and they've brought in their first non-family CEO. And, one of the things that they knew they needed to do, and that was part of that investment, was that they had to modernize and grow at scale. So quite often you get a new CFO or a new CHRO, and they have very definite ideas about what they want in the organization.
Yeah, that's right. And even with the CTOs, there's a cloud strategy, and this isn't just for finance and HR, across the board with all legacy systems that are to do with that organization. And not only do they have a cloud strategy that they want to bring about, but they might have preconceived ideas at places where they've previously been a CTO as to, what was brought in and whether it worked or it didn't. So that could be a poison chalice either way.
It can be.
But they're very forthright on what they've worked with before and whether it worked or it didn't.
Yeah.
And actually are the ones that push it forward, because it is part of the strategy, minimizing the actual IT hardware that you're having to manage on a constant basis, and the future and the way forward. So it's quite an interesting one, that when somebody new comes into an organization and how much they can get the existing organization to change despite the fact they brought you in to do it.
Exactly. We talked a little bit about business case early on, but if I just sum up, the value that you're going to get, the cost that you're going to stop or defer or move around. I think, we've mentioned here a lot of different stakeholders. I think you really need to know who they are and get their input into it, all the different parts, because, it's not IT doing IT, it's now IT working with the business. You need to bring all of those people in, all of the people who are going to be, even representatives of your end users, because if you're bringing in self-service for the first time, they're a big stakeholder as well. So all of those things, unions. I always think if you're a union organization, you should have a union member on your project team. Have all the stakeholders input into your business case, and find a champion. It might not be the new IT director, the CIO, it might be somebody else, but find a champion. They will help you with your business case internally. So very exciting. You and I really enjoy doing this, Steve. We've got hundreds we could talk
We live
about.
it, don't we?
We do live it. This is just the tip of the iceberg, what we've talked about today, but hopefully some of that will have resonated with some of the listeners, and happy to talk to anyone. I said at the beginning that I do a lot of road mapping, I start at a generic level. These are the things you should consider, and then work with customers about, okay, let's look at those considerations and then let's build a roadmap. I'm happy to do that generic session with anybody who's interested. It's about an hour, 90 minutes. If you're interested, then reach out to me. And if you're, my email's now on the screen. So reach out to me if you're interested in that. I've really enjoyed today. It's nice to drill down that one level below a generic and talk about actual examples of why people have moved. And what I'd really love feedback on is not only did you find this interesting, but what would you like us to talk about? What else in that process, in those considerations, would you like to talk about perhaps in our next webcast? So I don't think we have any questions, but I'll just check. No, I don't have any questions there, which is good because we're at time. Please do contact us. Please do come back to us. And thank you very much for listening. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks everybody. Thanks, Deborah. Appreciate it.
No problem.